You know, they say that the worst betrayals come from the people closest to you. I used to think that was just something people said in movies, a dramatic line to make the audience gasp. I never imagined I'd be living proof of how devastatingly true those words could be. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how I discovered that my boyfriend of 3 years and my best friend since childhood had been carrying on an affair behind my back for 8 months. 8 months. Let that sink in for a moment. It was a Tuesday in October when my world fell apart. Funny how the most ordinary days can become the ones that divide your life into before and after. I remember it was raining that morning, one of those Seattle drizzles that makes everything look gray and bleak. If I'd known what was coming, I might have taken it as a sign. I'd been with Marcus for 3 years. We met in college in one of those large lecture halls where you're just another face in a sea of students. He was studying engineering, I was pursuing journalism. He had this way of making me laugh, even during the most stressful finals weeks. We were that couple that everyone seemed to think would make it. The ones who complemented each other perfectly, who had already started talking about moving in together after graduation. And Emma? Emma had been my best friend since we were 12 years old. We'd met at summer camp, two awkward middle schoolers who bonded over our shared love of terrible pop music and our mutual terror of the camp's archery instructor. She was the maid of honor at my sister's wedding, the first person I called when I got my dream internship at the local newspaper, the one who held my hair back when I had food poisoning junior year. Emma knew everything about me. She knew that I still slept with a stuffed elephant named Peanut when I was particularly anxious. She knew that I cried during every single Disney movie, even the ones I'd seen 100 times. She knew that Marcus had a habit of leaving his socks on the bedroom floor, and that it drove me crazy, but I never said anything because I didn't want to seem naggy. She knew all of this because I trusted her with my whole heart. Because when you've been best friends with someone for over a decade, they become like family. Better than family sometimes, because you chose each other. The signs were there, I realize now. God, looking back, they were practically neon signs flashing in my face. But when you trust people completely, you don't look for signs. You don't analyze every interaction, every text message, every excuse. Marcus had been working late more often. "Big project at the firm," he'd say, kissing my forehead as he grabbed his jacket. "You know how it is?" And I did know how it was. His engineering firm was demanding, and I was proud of how dedicated he was to his career. I was building my own career too, working long hours at the newspaper, chasing stories, trying to make a name for myself. Emma had been busier too. "Dating someone new," she'd told me with a secretive smile. "It's still early, you know? I don't want to jinx it by talking about it too much." I'd pressed her for details, of course, but she'd been unusually coy. Emma was never coy about guys. She was the type to give me a play-by-play of every date, every text exchange, every butterfly-inducing moment. But this time was different, and she brushed off my questions with vague answers and subject changes. The three of us had been spending less time together lately. Marcus and Emma had never been particularly close. They were friendly because of me, but they didn't really have much in common. Or so I thought. When I'd suggest group activities, one of them always seemed to have an excuse. Marcus had work. Emma had plans with this mysterious new boyfriend. I should have connected the dots. But when you're in love, when you trust completely, you don't think the worst of people. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You believe their explanations because the alternative is too horrible to consider. The day I found out started like any other. I woke up in Marcus's apartment. I'd been staying there more and more lately, though we hadn't officially moved in together yet. He was already gone. He'd mentioned something about an early meeting. I made coffee in his tiny kitchen, scrolled through my phone, checked my work emails. Normal Tuesday morning routine. I had plans to meet Emma for lunch. We'd been trying to schedule it for weeks, both of our calendars packed with work and obligations. Finally, we'd managed to carve out 2 hours on a Tuesday afternoon. I was looking forward to it. I missed her. I missed our long conversations, our shared laughter, the easy comfort of her friendship. But then Emma texted me around 11 a.m. "So sorry, babe. Feeling really sick today. Rain check?" I was disappointed but not surprised. It was flu season, and half my newsroom was fighting off various bugs. "Of course," I texted back. "Feel better. Let me know if you need anything." Since my afternoon was suddenly free, I decided to surprise Marcus with lunch. He'd been so stressed lately, working those long hours. I thought maybe I could cheer him up, bring him his favorite sandwich from the deli near his office. It would be a sweet gesture, the kind of spontaneous romance that keeps relationships alive. I drove across town to his office building, a brown bag of food in hand and a smile on my face. I was actually excited. It felt like it had been forever since we'd had a proper conversation, just the two of us. Maybe we could find a nearby park and eat together, talk about our days, our future plans. But when I got to his floor, his assistant looked confused. "Marcus," she said. "He called in sick today. Said he was feeling pretty rough." My first thought wasn't suspicion. It was concern. My boyfriend was sick, and I hadn't known. I felt guilty for not being there to take care of him. I should have noticed he wasn't feeling well that morning. I should have offered to stay home with him. I drove to his apartment using the key he'd given me 6 months earlier, another milestone in our relationship that had felt so significant at the time. I was planning to make him soup, maybe run to the pharmacy for medicine. I was already mentally organizing a care package. His apartment was quiet when I let myself in. The curtains were drawn, and I assumed he was sleeping. I set the sandwich on his kitchen counter and tiptoed toward the bedroom, planning to check on him without waking him up. That's when I heard it. A laugh. A distinctly feminine laugh coming from his bedroom. But not just any laugh. Emma's laugh. I'd been hearing that laugh for 10 years. I knew it as well as I knew my own. For a moment, I stood frozen in his hallway, my brain struggling to process what I was hearing. Maybe Emma had come to take care of Marcus? Maybe she'd brought him soup, too, and they were watching a movie or something. There had to be an explanation. But even as I told myself this, my heart was already sinking. Because deep down, in that part of your gut that knows the truth before your mind catches up, I already understood what was happening. I heard Marcus's voice then, low and intimate in a way that made my chest tight. I heard Emma respond, and there was something in her tone, something soft and affectionate and romantic, that I'd never heard her use with anyone else. I should have left. I should have turned around, walked out of that apartment, and processed what I was hearing in private. But instead, I found myself moving closer to the bedroom door, which was slightly ajar. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed confirmation of what my heart already knew. They were in bed together. My boyfriend of 3 years and my best friend of 10 years, tangled up in sheets I'd helped Marcus pick out. In the bed where I'd slept countless nights. Emma was wearing one of Marcus's t-shirts, the gray one from his college that I'd borrowed so many times it was practically mine, too. They were talking quietly, intimately. Marcus was tracing patterns on Emma's arm, the same way he used to trace patterns on mine. Emma was smiling in a way I'd never seen before, completely content, completely at peace. They looked like they belonged together. They looked like they were in love. I must have made a sound, a gasp, maybe, or a sharp intake of breath, because suddenly they both looked toward the door. Emma saw me first, and I watched her face transform from contentment to absolute horror in the span of a heartbeat. Marcus followed her gaze, and the color drained from his face so quickly I thought he might be sick. "Sarah," Emma whispered, sitting up abruptly, clutching the sheet to her chest. "Oh God, Sarah, How long?" I asked. My voice sounded strange, distant, like it was coming from someone else. "How long has this been going on?" Neither of them answered immediately. They just stared at me with identical expressions of panic and guilt. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, a nervous habit I knew well. Emma's eyes were filling with tears. "How long?" I repeated louder this time. "Sarah, let us explain." Marcus started, but I cut him off. "I asked you a question. How long?" Emma was crying now, full tears streaming down her face. 8 months, she whispered. "It's been 8 months. 8 months. I did the math quickly in my head. It had started in February, around the time we'd all gone to that party for Marcus's coworker. I remembered that night. Emma had been unusually quiet, and Marcus had seemed distracted. I'd attributed it to work stress and Emma's chronic social anxiety at events where she didn't know many people. But apparently, they'd been noticing each other in a completely different way. The next few minutes were a blur of accusations and explanations and apologies that felt completely inadequate. Marcus kept saying he was sorry, that he never meant for it to happen, that he still cared about me. Emma was sobbing, reaching for me, trying to explain that she'd never wanted to hurt me, that it had just happened gradually, and then suddenly she was in too deep to know how to stop it. I listened to them scramble for words, for explanations that could somehow make this okay. But there was nothing they could say. No combination of words that could undo what I'd seen, what I now knew. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself, as devastating as that was. The worst part was realizing how long they'd been lying to me. 8 months of elaborate deceptions. 8 months of coordinated stories about work and mystery boyfriends and canceled plans. 8 months of looking me in the eye and pretending to be the people I thought they were. Every late night Marcus had spent at the office suddenly made sense. Every time Emma had been too busy to hang out, every secretive smile, every moment when I'd felt like something was slightly off but had talked myself out of trusting my instincts. They'd been building a relationship behind my back while I continued to love them both completely, openly, trustingly. I'd been sharing my life with them, telling Emma about my relationship problems with Marcus, asking Marcus for advice about surprising Emma for her birthday. The three of us had been living in completely different realities. I don't remember leaving Marcus's apartment that day. I have vague memories of walking to my car, of sitting in the parking lot for a long time, of driving home in a kind of shocked autopilot. I remember calling in sick to work, which felt absurd because I wasn't physically ill, but I couldn't imagine trying to write articles or conduct interviews when my entire world had just imploded. The days that followed were some of the darkest of my life. Both Marcus and Emma tried to contact me constantly. Phone calls, text messages, emails, even showing up at my apartment. Marcus wanted to talk things through, to explain his side of the story. Emma wanted forgiveness, wanted to find a way to salvage our friendship. But what was there to talk through? What was there to forgive? They had made a choice over and over again for 8 months. Every lie they told me was a choice. Every time they were together while I thought they were somewhere else was a choice. Every time they let me worry about Marcus working too hard or wonder why Emma was being so secretive about her dating life was a choice. The hardest part was the isolation. Suddenly, the two people I would normally turn to in a crisis were the people who had caused the crisis. Marcus had been my person. The one I called when I had good news or bad news, when I needed advice or just wanted to talk through my day. Emma had been my constant, the friend who knew all my stories, who I could be completely myself with, who I trusted with my deepest fears and biggest dreams. Losing them both at the same time felt like losing myself. So much of my identity was tied up in being Marcus's girlfriend, in being Emma's best friend. I didn't know who I was without those relationships defining me. The healing process was slow and painful and messier than I'd expected. There were days when I missed them so much that I almost convinced myself to forgive them, to find a way to make it work. There were days when I was so angry I couldn't think straight. There were days when I felt completely numb, like I was watching my life happen to someone else. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Martinez, who helped me understand that my grief was layered. I wasn't just mourning the end of a romantic relationship or the loss of a friendship. I was mourning the loss of my trust in my own judgment. I was grieving the realization that I'd been living in a fantasy, that the people I'd loved most had been capable of such elaborate deception. Through therapy, I began to understand that what had happened to me wasn't really about me at all. Marcus and Emma had made choices based on their own desires, their own weaknesses, their own inability to be honest with themselves and with me. Their betrayal was a reflection of who they were, not a reflection of what I'd done wrong or what I'd lacked as a girlfriend or friend. But understanding that intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two different things. For months, I replayed every interaction, looking for clues I'd missed, wondering if I'd been naive or stupid or willfully blind. I questioned every relationship in my life, wondering who else might be lying to me, what other truths I might be too trusting to see. It's been a year and a half now since that Tuesday in October. I wish I could tell you that I've completely healed, that I've moved on and found new love and everything is perfect now. The truth is messier than that. I've learned to be alone in a way I never was before. I've rediscovered parts of myself that I'd forgotten existed. Interests and dreams that had gotten buried under the routine of coupledom and the constant presence of a best friend who knew me so well she sometimes seemed to know what I wanted before I did. I've traveled alone for the first time in my adult life. I went to Italy last spring, spent 2 weeks wandering through museums and cafes and ancient ruins, having conversations with strangers and falling in love with my own company. I've taken up rock climbing, something I'd always wanted to try but had never pursued because neither Marcus nor Emma were interested. I've made new friends, slowly, carefully, with boundaries I never felt I needed before. I've learned to trust again, but differently. I trust with my eyes open now, aware that people are capable of both great love and great deception, sometimes simultaneously. And yes, I've started dating again. There's someone new in my life now, David, who I met through a hiking group I joined. He's kind and honest and patient with my trust issues. He understands that I need more transparency than most people might, that I notice when stories don't quite add up, that I need consistency between words and actions. The relationship with David is different from what I had with Marcus. It's more intentional, more conscious. I don't love blindly anymore. I don't assume that my feelings are automatically reciprocated at the same intensity. But in some ways, this feels healthier. I'm choosing to love David with full awareness of the risks, rather than stumbling into love with the naive assumption that it will automatically be safe. As for Marcus and Emma, I know from mutual friends that they're still together. Part of me wonders if they'll make it, if a relationship built on deception can transform into something honest and lasting. Part of me hopes they will, because the alternative, that they destroyed 3 relationships for something that wasn't even real, feels too tragic to contemplate. But mostly, I try not to think about them at all. I've had to actively work to reclaim the parts of my life they occupied. I've had to learn to enjoy activities I used to do with Emma, to visit places Marcus and I used to go together, to create new memories that don't have them in the background. Some days are harder than others. I still have moments when I want to text Emma about something funny that happened at work, or when I instinctively reach for my phone to call Marcus when I'm feeling anxious. The muscle memory of those relationships is strong, but I've also discovered a resilience I didn't know I had. I've learned that I can survive having my heart broken by the 2 people I loved most in the world. I've learned that betrayal, while devastating, isn't fatal. I've learned that trust, once broken, can be rebuilt. Not with the same people who broke it, but with new people who earn it. If I could go back and change what happened, I would. Not because I want Marcus and Emma back in my life, but because I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone. The moment of discovery, the shattering of reality, the long process of rebuilding yourself from scratch. It's something I wouldn't want anyone to experience. But I can't change what happened. What I can do is share this story, in case it helps someone else who's going through something similar. Because in those first dark weeks after the betrayal, I felt completely alone. I felt like no one could possibly understand what I was experiencing. The truth is, betrayal by people we love is more common than we want to believe. It happens to smart people, to kind people, to people who think they're good judges of character. It happens because humans are complex and flawed and capable of compartmentalizing in ways that can be both impressive and destructive. If you're listening to this and you're going through something similar, I want you to know that you're not alone. I want you to know that the pain you're feeling is valid and necessary and temporary. I want you to know that you will survive this, even when survival feels impossible. And if you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in Marcus or Emma's position, if you're betraying someone who loves you, I want you to know that there's still time to make different choices. The truth is always better than the lie, even when it's harder. Especially when it's harder. Love should be built on honesty, on respect, on the courage to be vulnerable with someone who chooses to be vulnerable with you in return. Anything else isn't really love at all. It took me losing everything to learn that lesson, but it's a lesson I'm grateful to have learned. My name is Sarah, and this is my story of betrayal and survival in the slow, difficult work of learning to trust again. Thank you for listening.